Moving on to the second episode, Alan continues his mission to give Charlotte a course in mischief. Yesterday's mission involved various cakes, wine, and other sweet treats. As we knew before, Charlotte is a woman from the Niels kingdom, accustomed to living by many rules. Additionally, she is often treated as a servant and receives minimal food rations. Certainly, the cakes, wine, and sweet treats at last night's dinner were a source of great joy for Charlotte. Alan is now contemplating the next mission, aiming to introduce Charlotte to enjoyable experiences she has never had before. Currently engrossed in reading books at the library to find inspirational ideas for his mission, it doesn't take long before Alan's distinctive evil laughter reverberates, indicating he has found ideas for the next mischief. He meticulously records these ideas in a book he titles List of Mischief. Alan completes the book overnight, falling asleep at the library table. Upon waking up the next morning, he reopens the book and suddenly wonders whether he is the only one enjoying all of this, considering Charlotte's perspective. In a moment of indecision, he tosses the book into the trash, still uncertain about his mission. As Alan gets up from his chair to leave the room, he is surprised by Charlotte's arrival, intending to clean the library. Charlotte warmly greets him, and Alan responds by saying he studied until he fell asleep. Concerned about Alan working late into the night, Charlotte advises him to rest and promises to wake him up later in the day. Taking the initiative, Charlotte cleans the library space and expresses gratitude for Alan's kindness in accommodating her and providing work. Alan is momentarily captivated by Charlotte's appreciative nature, gazing at her beautiful cheeks, radiant skin, and rhythmic breathing, everything appearing flawless without physical imperfections. Alan suggests that Charlotte should relax in the morning, but she insists that cleaning is her routine. Alan mutters about Charlotte being a royal aristocrat, wondering why she doesn't have servants. He speculates that people in the kingdom may harbor ill intentions toward her, especially considering their treatment of her, which has led to her becoming a fugitive. Observing Alan's unsettling silence, Charlotte excuses herself to clean other rooms. Alan firmly believes that the main culprits behind Charlotte's suffering are her royal family and former fiancé. He realizes that Charlotte has never spoken ill of her family, possibly out of fear or a lack of self-assertion. Filled with resentment, Alan desires to confront them all, but he acknowledges that this is unrelated to him. It would be better if he helps Charlotte build resentment against the people in the Niels kingdom. While lost in thought, Alan suddenly hears a voice greeting from outside the house. Panicking, Alan rushes to the door, only to find Mayach, the courier from Satirist Delivery Service, delivering a package. Alan is accustomed to ordering his necessities through Mayach. Without hesitation, Alan introduces Charlotte as his servant to Mayach. Being very friendly, Mayach immediately smiles and introduces herself to Charlotte. As Mayach and Alan are already familiar, Mayach affectionately refers to Alan as the Demon King, surprising Charlotte. Alan quickly explains that the Demon King is just a nickname and a bit of a joke. Mayach looks at Charlotte, mentioning that he has seen her in newspapers, showing her the articles. Charlotte's slightly frightened reaction indicates her acknowledgement, and Alan understands it. Alan promptly scolds Mayach, stating that there's a reason for it. With a casual smile, Mayach understands and mentions that he prioritizes customers, not bothering about the background of their servants. Charlotte smiles again and thanks Mayach for his understanding. Alan hands over the items he wants to entrust to Mayach, several bottles of magic potions. Mayach suggests that Alan stay in the city to make money, especially since magic potions are popular there. However, Alan refuses, citing the presence of humans as he strongly dislikes them. Mayach advises him to socialize more while still young. With a menacing face and a stern tone, Alan orders Mayach not to meddle in his affairs. Mayach and Charlotte are surprised by Alan's expression. Mayach remarks that people call him the Demon King because of Alan's terrifying face and demeanor. Terrifying witches should indeed stay away from humans. Alan recalls a past incident when 3 children were discussing him in the middle of the forest near his residence, even daring each other to challenge and defeat the Demon King. Emerging from the bushes with a lantern behind them, Alan calls the kids and tells them to leave because the place is spooky. Instantly, the 3 kids are terrified and run as fast as they can. Consequently, Alan's area often becomes a testing ground for courage, even though he just wants to live peacefully. Hearing this, Charlotte learns that the Demon King is just a nickname. Mayach adds that, on one hand, Alan hates humans, but on the other hand, he can also like them. Therefore, Maich suggests that Charlotte should have a new hobby or life goal. Alan asked Maich if his company could handle orders. Maich replied, "Of course," and handed over a pamphlet for Alan to check the list of available items. After perusing the contents of the pamphlet, Alan handed it to Charlotte to choose various supplies, especially women's necessities. Yesterday, Alan had already bought various items for Charlotte, but he wasn't aware of what a woman might need. After selecting several items, Charlotte thanked Alan and promised to repay him someday. However, Alan insisted there was no need, as it was his suggestion. Once again, Charlotte felt uneasy about Alan's generosity. Alan suggested that Charlotte shouldn't hesitate to choose what she liked, as if she felt hesitant, he would buy everything in the pamphlet. Charlotte thought Alan was being too extravagant. Maich burst into laughter, witnessing the adorable conversation between Alan and Charlotte. Maich teased, saying he felt sorry for Charlotte having to endure Alan's antics and advised her not to hesitate to express her dislike for Alan's behavior. Charlotte, with a gentle heart, responded that it was impossible for her to dislike Alan, who had been taking care of her. Maich amusingly demonstrated how she would hit Alan if he acted arrogantly. While mimicking the motion, Alan suddenly caught Maich's hand and laughed menacingly. Both Maich and Charlotte were frightened. It turns out that Maich's actions inspired an idea for a mission that Alan would undertake for Charlotte. The next day, Maich arrived with Alan and Charlotte's orders. Maich handed Charlotte her package, then Alan's order placed in a box the size of a wardrobe. Charlotte became curious about what was inside Alan's large order box. Maich asked Alan why he bought such items since Alan usually stays at home. It turns out Alan ordered these items for Charlotte. With his magical abilities, Alan made the large box disappear, revealing what we commonly call a punching bag, a tool to vent frustration specially ordered by Alan to train Charlotte in expressing her emotions. Charlotte thought the punching bag was only for sports, but Alan assured her it was for training her mischief. Maich, listening with a confused expression, had odd thoughts, thinking Alan had a peculiar hobby. Maich thought Alan was truly heartless to do such a thing to an innocent girl like Charlotte. Blushing, Alan explained that it wasn't what Maich imagined. Alan attached a picture of Prince Sissel's face he got from the newspaper and put boxing gloves on Charlotte. Then he instructed Charlotte to release stress by hitting the photos on the punching bag. Alan taught Charlotte to let out frustration, emotions, and anger that had been bottled up inside her. He emphasized that restraining emotions for too long is not always good, as it may eventually explode. Alan said that telling someone to hit something may start with hesitation, but eventually it becomes addictive. Unexpectedly, Charlotte said she wasn't angry with the prince because he must have had his reasons for his decisions. Alan tried to convince Charlotte that even with reasons, the prince shouldn't have broken off their engagement and highlighted the mistreatment Charlotte faced in the kingdom. The very kind-hearted Charlotte expressed gratitude to her family for caring for her since childhood, and she felt guilty for Prince Sissel's engagement. She firmly stated that she harbored no grudge against anyone. Alan, thinking his mission would be perfect, felt frustrated. The plan was for Charlotte to realize her resentment, infiltrate the neighboring country, expose the prince's wrongdoing, clear Charlotte's name, capture the real criminal, and then live happily ever after. However, Charlotte's emotional wounds were too deep for her to confront properly. She was accustomed to suppressing her feelings, and maybe if the prince were punished, she would blame herself. Maich suggested Alan not to get too involved in other people's family matters, but Alan argued that Charlotte's emotional wounds were too deep, and he didn't like waiting for time to heal. Alan approached Charlotte and instructed her to hit his face with all her might. Of course, Charlotte was reluctant to do so, considering that Alan had been taking care of her. Alan then flicked his fingers, using his magical powers to make the boxing gloves capable of moving Charlotte's hand. Charlotte threw a punch directly at Alan's left cheek, causing him to fall to the ground. Charlotte was shocked and mentioned that her hand moved on its own. Alan explained that it was all the magic he did, praising Charlotte for a great punch. Despite feeling guilty, Charlotte was reassured by Alan that even if she hit, stepped on, or cursed him, he would always be by her side. Alan would never leave Charlotte. This house was different from Charlotte's previous residence. Here, Charlotte was free to do anything. Hearing this, Charlotte began to understand. She asked Alan not to do this again, as her heart felt weak since she had never been violent before. Charlotte was fragile and very gentle. To alleviate Charlotte's guilt, Alan showed that he could heal his injuries with magic. Alan just wanted Charlotte to live without fear. Charlotte promised to try to overcome her fear and speak her mind. Alan praised her and assured her that he would always be there for her. Although this mission differed from the initial plan, at least Charlotte was starting to improve herself, and Alan would watch over her carefully. Mike smiled at Alan and Charlotte, teasing that Alan would probably continue to subscribe and order various other items like a big bed, a ring, and baby supplies. Charlotte and Alan exchanged confused glances. Meanwhile, behind a tree in the backyard, there was a figure listening to their conversation. Who could it be? Find out in the third episode.